For most of human history, people did not imagine Earth as a planet drifting through an endless vacuum. They pictured something completely different. They described the Earth as a stable realm surrounded by water, supported by foundations, and enclosed beneath a vast structure called the firmament. In ancient Hebrew cosmology, the sky was not empty space. It was a boundary separating the world below from the waters above. The sun, moon, and stars moved within this enclosed system, while beyond the firmament existed higher heavens and the dwelling place of God. Today, this model is usually dismissed as primitive mythology, but in the book The Firmament, the Vaulted Dome of the Earth, argues that these ancient descriptions were not symbolic. According to its author, they preserved an entirely different understanding of where we live, and that understanding was deliberately replaced. This video examines the central ideas presented in that book. It does not establish them as scientific fact. Instead, we are going to follow the author's argument, examine the texts, and see how he has identified that the world that we know today has been reconstructed. So, the investigation begins with the opening lines of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Most people read this as simple description of an unfinished earth. The author sees something much more dramatic. He focuses on the Hebrew words translated as without form and void, tohu vabohu. These words can carry meanings such as waste, desolation, confusion, emptiness, and ruin. The author therefore argues that Genesis may not be describing a world that had never been formed. It may be describing a world that had been completely ruined. This interpretation is commonly connected with what is called the gap theory, the belief that an unknown period of time existed between the first and second verses of Genesis. Under this interpretation, the first verse describes an original creation. The second describes that creation after some forgotten catastrophe. The author connects this idea with Jeremiah, where similar language is used. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. Jeremiah then describes trembling mountains, displaced hills, and cities reduced to ruins. But the passage also says that there was no man. This creates a mystery at the center of the book's opening argument. How could cities have existed before humanity? Who built them, and what destroyed them? The author proposes that a civilization existed before Adam and Eve. This was not simply an early human society. He describes this more of an antediluvian world ruled by supernatural beings, like rebel angels who were cast out of heaven. According to this theory, the war in heaven did not happen at the end of history. It occurred during an early cosmic age. Lucifer and the angels who followed him attempted to overthrow the divine order. They lost and were cast down into the earthly realm. The author links these beings with the gods described in ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, and other Near Eastern traditions. Ancient kings describe rulers whose reigns lasted tens of thousands of years. Instead of treating these numbers as mythology or symbolic chronology, the author interprets them as evidence that these rulers were not ordinary humans. He identifies them with fallen spiritual beings who governed the pre-Adamic world. In this reconstruction, these beings created cities, temples, and advanced civilizations. The author associates their world with traditions surrounding Atlantis and other lost continents. Their rebellion eventually brought judgment. Earth was devastated, and many cities were destroyed. The former world descended into darkness and water, and the planet described in Genesis 1:2 was therefore, according to this interpretation, not a new world waiting to be completed, but a wreckage of an old world waiting to be restored. And the creation week that follows was actually a process of reconstruction. On the second day of creation, Genesis describes God placing a firmament between two bodies of water. Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, let it divide the waters from the waters. The waters below remained connected with the seas and the deep. The waters above were lifted and held beyond the firmament. The key Hebrew word is raqia. It comes from a root associated with beating, spreading, or hammering something. This book argues that the language suggests a real, extended structure rather than an empty atmosphere. Some translations render the word as dome. The complete Jewish Bible, for example, describes a dome placed in the middle of the water to divide the water from above and the water that is below. Other ancient texts cited in the book describe how the lower heavens are solid, fixed, or dense, and some compare this to hardened water, crystal, metal, or glass. The Book of Secrets of Enoch describes the heavenly circle being made firm after the boundaries of the sea were established. Another ancient account portrays the heavens as an enormous tent whose edges descend toward the surrounding oceans. So this creates a very specific model. The earth becomes the floor, the firmament rises over it like a tent or canopy or ceiling. The edges of the firmament meet the outer boundaries of the earth. Above the structure is celestial water. Below it is the sea. And the book's diagram near the beginning illustrates this ancient conception that earth positioned between waters below and waters above, the sun and moon and stars moving everything around the firmament, and the divine dwelling situated beyond it. So, with the author's theory, the firmament served more than one purpose. It separated the water, it organized heaven, it established boundaries of an inhabited world, but it also functioned as a prison wall. After the rebellion in heaven, the fallen angels were confined to the lower realms of creation. The author proposes that the firmament was built as an impenetrable barrier to prevent them from ever returning to high heavens again. This transforms the meaning of an enclosed world. Humanity is not living inside of a random physical system. We are living inside a protected and restricted realm positioned between heaven, the deep, and the underworld. The firmament separates the domain of humanity from the divine world above it. At the same time, it contains beings that were cast down after the heavenly rebellion. The sky, under this interpretation, is both a ceiling and boundary between spiritual territories. This is why the book continually connects cosmology with theology. The shape of the world is not presented as a minor scientific issue. This is part of a much larger story involving creation, rebellion, judgment, and perhaps redemption. So Genesis does not describe the sun, moon, and stars being created until the fourth day. The author considers this detail extremely important. The earth and firmament had already been established before the celestial lights appeared. The lights were then placed within the firmament to govern the days, nights, seasons, and years. Under the standard astronomical model, Earth rotates while orbiting the sun, and the moon orbits the earth. This book rejects that interpretation. Instead, it presents Earth as stationary, while the celestial bodies move above it. The sun, moon, and wandering stars travel through different circuits within heaven. Some ancient texts describe multiple heavenly levels with different celestial bodies assigned to different circles. Polaris occupies a special position because it appears fixed while the other stars seem to rotate around it. The author interprets this as evidence that Polaris stands very close to the central axis of the heavenly system. Rather than Earth spinning beneath the stars, the entire celestial field is understood as turning above a motionless Earth. This is how the author interprets ancient references to the sun traveling along appointed paths, entering gates and emerging through different openings during different seasons. The sky then becomes a cosmic clock, and the movement of the lights mark time because they follow predetermined circuits. The windows of heaven. So the Bible repeatedly refers to the windows of heaven. During the flood of Noah, the windows of heaven were opened and water poured down upon the earth. In Malachi, God promises to open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing. Modern readers understand these phrases metaphorically. The book interprets them structurally. If water exists above the firmament, then openings would be required for those waters to pass into the lower world. The windows of heaven may therefore have been gates or portals built into the firmament. The flood, under this interpretation, was not caused by rain clouds. Water was released from beyond the heavenly boundary, while the fountains of the deep opened from below. The inhabited world, it was overwhelmed by both directions, so both from the sky and from the ground. The same enclosed system that established order during creation temporarily returned to chaos. One of the most important descriptions used by the book comes from the book of Job. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as molten looking glass? Ancient mirrors were not made from ordinary glass. They were often used and produced from polished metal. The author argues that the phrase molten looking glass presents the sky as something rigid, reflective, and metallic. Other passages describe heaven as crystal, sapphire, or a sea of glass. In Ezekiel's version, a structure resembling crystal appears above the living creature. Above that expanse is a throne. In Revelation, John describes a sea of glass like crystal before the throne of God, and the author connects all of these descriptions. The crystal expanse in Ezekiel, the sea of glass in Revelation, and the firmament in Genesis are interpreted as different views of the same structure. From below, humanity sees a sky. Within prophetic visions, Ezekiel sees a crystal expanse, and from above, John sees a sea of glass before a divine throne. The book even interprets that aurora borealis through this cosmology, because northern lights appear near the polar region in shifting bands of luminous color. The author speculates that they could represent light interacting with the upper surface of the firmament. Revelation's sea of glass mingled with fire is therefore connected with the glowing, flame-like appearance of the aurora. Many ancient traditions treated the north as spiritually significant. The author argues that the northern center of the world lies directly beneath the highest point of the firmament. Above that central point is the divine throne. This model resembles a tent. The outer edges are lower, the center rises to its greatest height, and humanity lives beneath it. While the heavenly throne stands beyond the central summit, biblical descriptions of God sitting above a circle, walking upon the vault of heaven and looking down upon inhabitants below are interpreted literally within the structure. The tabernacle built by the Israelites is also treated as a small earthly model of a great heavenly temple. Its arrangement, divisions, and sacred furniture all reflect a cosmic pattern. The earth is the lower court, the firmament functioned like a veil, and beyond it exists a heavenly sanctuary and throne room. The ancient temple was therefore not a religious building. This was a symbolic map of creation. The Bible speaks repeatedly about ends, edges, and foundations of the earth. Within the book's model, these expressions are geographical rather than poetic. The earth is presented as a circular plane surrounded by an outer boundary. At that boundary, the firmament descends and meets the waters of the outer ocean. The author associates this with Antarctica. Instead of viewing Antarctica as a continent at the bottom of the globe, he treats this as an enormous ring of ice surrounding the inhabited world. Now I want you to take a minute, open up Google Maps, zoom out, and just take a look at what they show us is surrounding us. This ice boundary, he argues, could be the place where the ocean and the lower edges of the firmament meet. This book connects this theory with Operation High Jump, the large American Antarctic expedition led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd after the Second World War. The expedition's documented purpose involved military training, scientific research, and establishing Antarctic bases. The author speculates that another objective may have been to investigate the outer boundaries of the world. He also connects later high-altitude nuclear tests, including Operation Fishbowl, with attempts to test or penetrate the firmament. These conclusions are all speculative. The document does not provide any evidence showing that either operation was designed to attack a physical dome. However, these events form a major part of the author's wide interpretation of modern space programs. The final sections of the book move beyond ancient cosmology and into conspiracy. The author argues that the heliocentric model did more than change astronomy. This changed humanity's understanding of itself. Under the enclosed biblical model, Earth occupies the center of creation. Humanity lives directly beneath the heavens in a world intentionally designed by God. Under the modern model, Earth is one planet among billions, orbiting an ordinary star in an enormous and empty universe. The author believes that this transition was deliberate, and so do I. In his view, the heliocentric model separated humanity from the creator by replacing the divine creation with an impersonal cosmos. NASA and other space agencies are presented as guardians of this modern world. The author disputes the Apollo moon landings, questions space photography, and argues that radiation prevents humans from being able to travel into outer space. He interprets modern astronomy as a constructed belief system. It is important to separate the book's claims from established evidence. The Apollo missions are supported by extensive physical records, independent tracking, returned lunar samples, and later observations of equipment left on the moon. But as we know, these things can all be doctored. So, if people can be convinced that they live on an insignificant planet in limitless space, they will no longer recognize Earth as a specially constructed realm beneath the throne of God. This argument is ultimately about identity. The author believes that changing the map of creation changed humanity's understanding of its own origins, purpose, and spiritual importance. So, perhaps the real question is not what shape the earth has, but the deeper question is what kind of world do we believe that we are living in, and who taught us to see it this way?